So I'm over at Agate, going through the shelves, looking for items that are not suitable for eBay. But we also took items out and dropped them off because we're limited on our storage ability here, especially as we work to clear agate. At some point, if we put agate up for sale, I actually drive the stake in the ground that says for sale. I'll probably end up bringing a few trailer loads of product from agate over here, and I'll be back to having them stacked up in bins, lined up against the wall until I get through them. So I've been trying to go through the stock over at Agate and the stock that's here. And if it's been listed for a while and hasn't sold, and it's probably due to the shipping because it's a larger item, those are candidates to go out to the local auction. I'll show you a couple of those too. Okay, so I'm over at Agate, going through the shelves, looking for items that are not suitable for eBay. And here's an example. Some old test equipment that came in from a storage auction clear out. Here's another one. This one's a regulated DC power supply. It's its weight, and it's probably a little fragile, so I don't like shipping a lot of test equipment out through the mail. Sometimes I'll do it if I know it's good for parts or repair, but let's see what else I can find. Here's another good example. It's the King, an outdoor cooker package, still sealed in its box. Came to me from a local auction. It was a curated auction, and this one was just out of place, so I paid a couple of bucks for it. We put it up on Facebook, thinking it would be good leading up to the 4th and summer. No takers on Facebook, so we'll recover the space from the Agate shelves and send it on its way to a local auction. Now here's a couple of rubber duckies. Inflatable swim float by Intech. Yeah, those were some surplus ones in the shed, so we pulled them out. Rosie's inflated them to check them. They will probably go to the auction as well. It's the right time of year. It's almost like a barter system. You know, I'm taking items I'm not interested in selling online, and I'm turning them into a bit of money. And then I'm taking that money and I'm buying smaller things that are easier to mail that can go online. So I'm exchanging one type of good for another. And that goes back to a way that a lot of people start their selling career online. They hit their closets, they hit their garages, they take a look at their hobbies, maybe their bookshelves, and they find product that they're just not interested in anymore, or items they have a surplus of. You know, certain people collect certain things, and there comes a point where one has to say, you know, how many brass belt buckles from the 70s can I wear at any given time? So if you're a collector of belt buckles, paring down your collection to fund critical items that you want to add to your collection is a way to fund it. Collections have a tendency to grow, and at certain phases you're just adding anything in a given group. Over the years working for the auction house, we've cleared out some, unicorn collections, frog collections, cow collections, pig collections. And you got to wonder, were they going for quality or quantity? Because there are some very unusual items, and there are some run-of-the-mill items. And if you fill your house with one thing, or people find out you collect one thing and they send along more of it, it can get overwhelming. So within those hobby collections can be some items to resell and recoup some of the cash and turn around and use it to fund your next purchase. We'll turn the camera on again when I go down to clear the packing bench of the items I unloaded from the truck. So here you can see that last lot. Here's the LeBron James, some Matchbox type cars, some dice games. Those are those clear lead figurines. These two are Camelback parts that I'll send along with the Camelback. But you can see right here, that number sequence tells you it's a mil-spec hydration system. And here's the vintage robot. A little bit yellowed on some of the plastic areas. There are ways to whiten and lighten it, but I don't normally bother. My concern will be the condition of the battery compartment, which looks pretty good, and whether he operates and functions. So that way we can give him a test. And here's that gaming headset, SA7 08. And it's still got its seals in place. All right, here's that Warner ladder lot. You can see it's basically 2 frames and the tools to install it in a storage case, Warner branded. Here's that other group of toys, Disney, Fortnite, Ricky Zoom, which I've never heard of, Yo-Yo, still sealed. Here's another dice game, some magic stuff. Here are the 3 lots of Native American. This one happens to be photos, Indians of the Southwest, portraits from America. Some of these are vintage books, so it's likely they'd be hard to come by. The Dungeness Massacre. This one I've sold before. This is a good book. Here's one with a cloth cover. Again, may or may not have much value. The World of the American Indian. And the same is true of some of these Reader's Digest books. These may not have any value, and if they don't separately, I'll lot them up and either send them back to auction or sell them locally. But it's the unusual ones. Like here's a story of somebody from the Tillamook tribe. Here's one that says, as long as the river flows. So these are the ones I was actually after, but as often happens, you end up buying them in big groups and then have to split them out. Now here's that group of postcards that I had high hopes for, and we'll see how this works out. A lot of multiple copies and multiple themes. Mount St. Helens, of course, erupted some time ago here in Washington State, left this devastation in its wake, and if I've got enough, I'll make multiple lots with multiple quantities, and that way I'll theme them up as Mount St. Helens. Here, for instance, shows what I'm talking about with multiple quantities. These are the Washington State Legislature, our state capital. Here's some more of the Mount St. Helens. You can see about an inch thick of the same postcard. So as we go through here, here's some more of that particular Starrett House. And there's Toano State Park. There's a vintage postcard. That park is still around. The whole rainforest, part of the Olympic Peninsula. Mount McKinley, so that's Alaska. That theme changes. Here's one of the mossy areas, what I call the green gunk. Washington apples. You can see I must have about 20 of them or so. And what I'll do is I'll decide whether to put them up with, if there are other postcards of apples or fruit, maybe I'll provide somebody 6 assorted. If they don't, I'll consider putting them up as a group of, say, 6 together of the same postcard. And that way maybe a Washington apple grower would like to send those out this year. And in many of these mystery boxes like this, here's a vintage Japanese protractor. I've got a small group in there of old drafting type equipment, so I'll just add it to that. And here's a sealed envelope that was in with these postcards. Well, let me slit that open and we'll see what's in there. Maybe it's money. Well, not quite money, but a big group of S&H stamps. I used to fill these out in booklets for my grandmother, and then she could get things by turning in so many stamps. She'd be able to get household type items. Yeah, it was quite the gimmick. Early coupon days. S&H, of course, was Sperry and Hutchinson, and that was an early form of advertising. You know, you collected something and then exchanged it. Kind of the way McDonald's gives away toys.